now. Excited again to share the stage with all of you here for this next panel related to AI. I'll go ahead and quickly hand it over to our panelists to do initial introductions. So Dr. Ilana, do you want to kick us off and we'll hand it off?
Sure. Thanks so much, Jim. So I'm Ilana Goldberg. I am a program director in the Division of Blood Resources and Development, DBDR, at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. And I run a portfolio on integration of AI and modeling to technology for blood development. So really looking at how we're integrating AI and modeling aspects to all of the aspects of blood diseases and blood development that we work on. And I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
And James.
Hi, my name is James Lowe. I'm program director at the Cardiovascular Division, and my portfolio including data science, genomics, and other omics, as well as imaging processing. And I'm involved in TOPMed, that I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, and also BDC, Biodata Catalyst. That's one of NHLBI's flagship data science project, and mostly for repository and tools and things like that. And I also participating in trans-NIH data science working groups, and I will not go to detail on that. Thanks.
All right. So today we have the exciting opportunity to dig into this really hot topic a little bit more, artificial intelligence and its intersection with kind of innovation within the NHLBI and other kind of medical device space. Each of you are bringing really interesting background and experience to the table based on your various roles. To start, maybe I think it would be helpful to just offer your individual reflections on the last several years. What have you seen in the industry related to AI and how it's evolved as we've gotten, we know AI is not a new technology by any sense, but it certainly has been increasing in popularity. Some would say increasing in hype very recently. So as experts in the field, what have been your observations and reflections?
So
Ilana, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I think the most interesting observation I have is if you look at technology adaptation, and there's all these graphs on how long it took a certain amount of users to start using Google search engine, to start using a computer. The fastest adaptation so far has been using AI. So the tools are readily available, they're easily available, and people, without any experience and background can get on them and start using them, and people really have been. And I think when you think in terms of new technology, how fast the AI technology has been adapted and been used everywhere, not just in healthcare, but everywhere in our lives and in general, it's absolutely fascinating. But then it also brings about implications that haven't really been able to be discussed or be talked about because it's been adapted so fast and used so fast. And to me, that's something that almost blows my mind when I see the charts and see the graphs and understand how pervasive it is in all of our lives and how we've done that so quickly. So that's my first big reflection. I'll hand it over to James.
Yeah, over the last 7 years, I see a tremendous growth in terms of number of applications using AI, machine learning, and modeling. So we did publish the portfolio analysis in 2019. At that time, that's before we get up to 17 from 07 to 2017. And the number of data science including AI and machine learning, but it's not just exclusively AI and machine learning. But data science in general, it's only about 1% of an NHLBI grant in terms of number of grant, in terms of dollar amount. We did look at other institutes like NCI and IID and other institutes. They have similar number, very low. But for last 7 years, we see a tremendous growth in terms of AI and machine learning, and most of them are focused on the stratification of patient population for precision medicine and the risk assessment, and to see what's your risk in certain disease area, and clinical decision support, and the EHR, as well as the imaging process analysis and automatic imaging process in those areas. So it's very interesting. In the beginning, I got more small business grant than regular R01, but now R01 is catching up. But since the large language model is just come out, and I only see very few in that area. So I'm expecting more and more that will come in that area too. So that's, again, in terms of application, and there are some AI applications that for drug discovery, like MIT, they discovered a antibody that using AI technology that is not in the regular classic of class drug in terms of chemical structure, but they did identify one. And also in the diagnostic, and there's another area, and people and more people in using AI in that area. And interestingly, and one of them, my PI, they got AI clearance from FDA. Yesterday we talked about FDA regulation, and they don't do clinical trial. I was wondering why you didn't do a clinical trial, but FDA approved it and cleared it. And what in this particular case, it's an assistant device for the performance of a professional healthcare provider. And so in that case, it's rely on the healthcare provider, and it's more of an assistant to evaluate the performance. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, and I will stop here for now. Maybe we can chat more on other topics.
Yeah, James, I think we'll come back to that topic. It's definitely an interesting use case, this AI as an assistant to experts. But you mentioned several others, right? The image processing piece, the novel drug discovery piece. There's a lot of ways in which this technology is intersecting the various domains of research that folks on the call are involved in. I'm curious, Ilana, in your experience kind of in the realm and the domain of blood disease, blood science, how are you seeing these technologies intersecting in kind of specific use cases?
In a lot of the same ways. So I kind of bucket it into different areas, but I'll start with image analysis, especially because we look at a lot of bone marrow smears, cell smears interpretations. Can we automate that? And what it's looking at is it's being automated. Instead of having a pathologist spend hours looking at them, they're being automated and being able to be diagnosed by these AI machine learning algorithms. And then we look at just data analysis, and I differentiate this by saying non-image type analysis, but a lot of genomics analysis, DNA sequence pattern recognition, variant calling, variant effect prediction and classification, right? There's a lot going on in that area. And then we get into a lot of data integration. So this is putting together different types of data, image data, non-imaging data, EMR data, and using it not only to integrate, but also for modeling. And finding associations between different things. So can we find associations between genetic variants and their cytomorphical changes? Can we find associations that would be harder to look at if we didn't have these tools helping us? And then that leads directly into my sort of fourth category here, which is prognosis. But now we've put all of this data together, can we use it for prediction? One of the best examples is sickle cell disease, because we know it's a disease that progresses and pain crises occur for these patients, and they get so bad they end up in the hospital. But can we predict when these pain crises might occur so we can treat these patients beforehand so that they don't end up in the hospital, so their lives are not disrupted, so they have a better quality of life? Can we predict when the sickle cell disease might progress to kidney disease and try to head that off beforehand? Can we predict the likelihood of patients entering clinical trials, right? Especially when you might have a lot more patients that want to enter a clinical trial than you can take. What's the success for the individual patients? And that also leads to James' point on precision medicine, right? Looking at the whole individual body. And then one thing we look at a lot in our division is transplantation. So can we predict of the patients that are eligible for transplantation, who will have risks and complications, and what types those will be, and how we can treat them beforehand? So this is really exciting. This just is, a small overview of a lot of different areas that's being used at in blood sciences, but a lot of ways it can go.
And as you think about those categories, are there any that are more mature versus less mature, or is it pretty variable across the set?
So right now, we're at the infancy, right? We have these tools, we know how to use them, we can see that they will work. And one thing I try to tell the blood community a lot is, we can do these predictions. We can do them for a certain set of samples from a certain blood bank, and it's 98, 90, almost 100% accurate. But if you take samples and you compare across different blood banks, the models don't always translate, and inevitably the success rate goes down. And so I think where we are in the crossroads now are, we've seen it done on these data sets from certain specific areas. We need to combine these data sets. We need to be able to translate and talk between different types of blood banks, put all that data together and improve these models so it doesn't just work for one blood bank or one set of samples, but works across the areas. And I think that's where we're really getting at, where people are really seeing. And I think, one of the things with AI in general is that it's really going to take a lot of team scientists, different people coming together to talk about it, to add their expertise, to put it together. And what really excites me is we're just there. We're just on the verge. We're just building those teams and putting those together. And that's, where it's really right to innovate right now. How can we put the right people together? How can we make sure we have all the data we need together? How can we make sure we have the right kind of data, because the data matters, making sure it's good data, and that gets into biases and data, things like that I won't put in right now, but we're right there. We're right at the exciting moment, and now is the time to think about these things, and now is the time to start working together and get that running.
This feels like a great segue, talking about the need to aggregate data and get really reliable, robust, broad data sources. James, could you tell us a little bit more about kind of TOPMed, the Transomic for Precision Medicine program?
Yeah, that's a good segue to TOPMed. So speaking of TOPMed stands for Transomics Precision Medicine. So it's resources, and it's one of the richest and most diverse and in terms of size, and one of the largest data sets out there. And what it has is the whole genome sequence. We have about 200,000. That's a big number, and not many people. And maybe in the world there's used to be just number one, but now there are three that close to 200,000, and like all of us and the UK. So, and we have joined the call, the variance, and it's close to a billion, number B. It's a billion, not a million. It's a billion variants. And so it's a huge amount of data there. And also we have omics data, we have RNA-seq, we have proteomics, we have methylation, and we have metabolomics. And so we have a bunch of omics data there. And again, the phenotype, and without a phenotype, you're not going to go far. And we have all the phenotype, well-phenotyped. And in terms of ethnicity, we have African-American, and we have Caucasian, we have Asian, and it's pretty wide, and it's pretty inclusive. So now, as I said, we have billion variants. I don't want to give a number, but the majority of them we don't know the biological function. So using AI could potentially discover some of that. So that's one of the potential that people can use that data. So, and the population is in terms of the research community, and we have 2,000 PIs involved in TOPMed, and some of the tools like Imputation Server and Bravo, Imputation Server is for imputation the genome using genotype, and the Bravo is a variance browser. Those tools, we have over 10,000 people using them. So we have a big population there and using them. So we want more people use that and uncover some of the disease-related genes and how to predict some of the functions. And so that's some of the areas that we are trying to promote.
That's great. Reminder to the audience, feel free to drop in questions for our panelists here into the chat. As we go along, we'll provide the links like to TOPMed as we just dropped in here, and others as they're referenced. I alluded to earlier, James and Ilana, there's certainly over the past 10 years been waves of AI hype and maybe a little bit of AI fatigue. With the emergence of generative AI within the last year, it feels like we are perhaps at the crest of one of these hype cycles right now. As you reflect on this new flavor of AI, new fundamental approach to AI, what's your outlook for how this new type of AI may impact the various intersections with which you all operate?
Yeah, in terms of maturity, and so right now what I can see is diagnostic, and I have two examples, one from MIT, one from Harvard, and one of them are my PIs, and so during the pandemic, and they can use cough. The MIT team used the cough to identify the COVID, if you have infected COVID or not. And they can distinguish that from regular and common cold. So they can do that. So the AI demonstrated the power there. And also in the other case, in the Harvard case, that's my PI. And what they can do is they use the mobile device, trying to use that signal and to do the diagnostic. And what they can actually do is they can detect if someone's infected 3 or 4 days before you can test it by PCR. You can get a positive PCR test. So it's extremely powerful. So some of the mobile device, they can show your activities and the breath and all of that, heart rate and all of that. So they can use that to do the diagnostic. And of course, it will be good screening tools in that. So that's something that is pretty mature, and some of that. And looking forward, and I believe I mentioned about that some of the variance functions, and that's one area. And also, about 2 or 3 years ago, we have a workshop on radiogenomics. That means using imaging and the genomics as the data source, trying to cross-link just 2 data sources. That will be more powerful than just one data source. And so that one, I'm expecting some of that will bear some fruit in the near future. That's one area that I'm looking forward to. The other one that I mentioned briefly is the function. We have billions of variants that we discover, and we really need to understand their function to be able to utilize that for clinical utility and treatment and drug target and things like that.
And then
Great,
just to
thanks.
add to that, in the broader sense, we are seeing generative AI being used almost as physician's assistants. So there's examples where generative AI is able to make rare disease diagnostics that is harder for a specific physician to make. In terms of the broader aspect of medicine and having it function, generative AI is able to use to help with note-taking, making sure that patients' records are recorded properly. These are all not in place yet, but things that we are seeing on the horizon, things that are coming on, happening. So the diagnostic aspect, the prognostic aspect is really exciting, and all of the data that it can absorb. But I really agree and the genomics is a huge example, because we can now identify so many genomic variants, especially with the databases like TOPMed that we have, but we don't necessarily understand what those function of those variants are. And can we use the generative AI in order to start predicting those functions? Just another plug to what James said, because it's really something that we're looking at, especially in the case of precision medicine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I want
that's a
to
great.
add one more.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
James.
one more example, that's the risk prediction. And so we have the aneurysm, and but right now we based on the size of aneurysm, and that's not accurate. And to use that and make a decision for surgery, you need to do surgery to remove that, and that's not accurate for now. So using AI, not only use the size, but many other factors and imaging and all of that, and they can have much better prediction of if the aneurysm will erupt or not. So that will help the clinician surgeon to make a decision if that need to be done with the surgery or not. So that's other sense that is going on too.
We'll come back to this broader point, but both of you kind of alluded to aspects of this technology, the intersection of AI and medicine. There's the technical aspect, certainly the potential of the technology from a technical viability standpoint, but there's this whole other realm of kind of concerns, both ethical efficacy, trust in the system. We'll come back to that topic in just a minute. We're getting a few great questions in here in the chat. Before we take a couple of those questions, I want to allow each of you the chance to kind of ask my last question here, which will be, what advice would you have for the entrepreneurs, innovators, academics in the audience here that are moving tech-enabled therapeutics or other types of innovations to market, and thinking about how to incorporate or wrestle with the intersection of AI in this industry?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's here to stay and it's coming. We see it's here. It's not just that it's coming. We see very few applications now that don't incorporate some kind of AI and technology into it, especially if you're talking about a diagnostic device. And even in the earlier stages, drug development, of using AI to help narrow down candidates, we're looking at it. It's making science faster, and it's making diagnostics, it's changing the paradigm. And so whatever your feelings are on AI, it's not going away, and you need to pay attention to that. And I know we've had some really good talks by the FDA yesterday. I know there's some talks previously that RTI put on about FDA regulation and AI, but you've got to start paying attention to that on top of how FDA is regulating everything else, how it's going to be looking at regulating the AI models and algorithms that you are going to be using in your technology, because the innovative technology that's coming out all incorporates AI in some way. And so it's another thing that needs to be paid attention to, and make sure you understand really what those requirements are going to be. Like I say, you should always design your technology towards what the requirements are. It is cheaper and faster than going back and retrofitting once you find out the requirements later. So that's something that definitely has to be paid attention to.
Yeah, I totally
Great,
agree with
thanks.
you, Ilana. And so I think the key is the AI is here, and no matter if you want to do it, somebody will do it. Somebody will do it. But I think the key here is to validation. If you want to use it in the clinical setting, for the patient, for diagnostic or stratification or risk assessment or whatever, and the validation is very important. And sometimes the AI may be just a black box, and I think that's not going to be enough. You really need to know, you really need to understand how they come to the conclusion, and particularly if it's reproducible and trustworthy. So that's really, really important. And the other thing that I want to bring up is the training data. So the training data is so critical, and the result will be heavily dependent on the training data. And if you don't have certain training data and the result, you will not get the result in that area. So it's so critical. You need to really do a good curation of your training data before you get a meaningful and trustworthy and validatable result.
Right, and to add on to that, there are a lot of training data sets that are used. And what is happening nowadays, because there isn't in the blood field, I'm only talking about the blood field, there isn't so many training data sets as people will take the training data and divide it. So they'll use 70% of the training data to train the algorithm and 30% to validate that. And really, we need to do better. We need to use 100% of the training data to train the algorithms, and then there needs to be another data set that can be used for validation. And we're getting there, but it's all in terms of having the data you need and making sure that you have it. So I see training data and validation data as separate data sets. We're getting to that point. We're not there yet. The dividing it is working, but this is, again, to my point of being able to do create algorithms that work, interlaboratories that work on different data sets. You've really got to look at training data and validation data as separate, and that's something that we're getting at as we're generating more data for this.
The concept of validation feels like a good bridge to our first couple of audience questions here. Both have components of validation. So the first question is, James, could you speak a little bit more about kind of the intersection of AI and drug target discovery and validation? And then, building on that, just maybe comment on the different types of validation that are best suited to assess the veracity of the results from AI and biomedical research, like in the drug development context specifically.
Yeah, that's my favorite topic. And so I'm glad Martin asked that question. So I believe one of the area for AI is in the drug discovery. And I give you one example, and I believe I have read another example to discover a new drug that actually it's a drug that has been out there, but that has not been used for particular treatment, a particular condition, and let's put it that way. So, but as you can see, even though we have AI for a number of years now, and I'm not just talking about large language model, but for AI algorithm, but the result is kind of anecdotal result. Maybe some of the team are lucky, or maybe they have used the right tool. And I was wondering if that approach can be generalized and can be used for discover other drug class and other. And one of the other areas that I'm mostly interested in, myself is interested in, is the secondary use or repurpose of existing drug. Why this is more important? Why this is more interesting? Because we have the claims data, we have the pharmacy data, and all of the data are there. So we could use the AI to discover some conditions that may not be used in the FDA approved condition, but through the AI, you can identify the same medication could be used for other condition or diseases. I think that maybe in the next few years, that may be one of the areas that will be booming. And because the data are there, it's not like you discover a new chemical and we may not have enough data to do that kind of discovery. Again, AI is not something that discovered from nowhere. You have to have data to start.
Yeah, and I think I really like that, James, in terms of finding new indications for drugs that are already in use. But I think on the other hand, other end of the drug discovery realm, when you're looking to find new types of drugs, I think the way AI is working is it's speeding up that process, right? A lot of times it's, a hit or miss. Hey, we have all these molecules in a class, let's just try some and see what works. But now scientists and medical scientists are able to make more educated guesses on which ones to try in advance, because they're able to use the AI to combine this data and say, hey, we think this type of drug class will work, or this specific molecule should be tried first. And so it's really speeding up the more positive hits that are being gotten. And on that end, the validation is, hey, did it work or not? And that's really great to see.
Yeah, Ilana, it sounds like in the context of drug discovery, the validation step isn't necessarily always being impacted by AI, but it's the increased hit rate of the molecules that you're starting with. Increasing your percentage success has pretty big downstream implications. So it's one of the predictive capacities of AI generally. Great comments. Good question. Thank you for those questions. Please keep them coming. Martha asked a question about whether or not or how AI might inform biomanufacturing protocols for therapeutics. Either of you have observations, thoughts on that question?
So Martha, that is a great question. Because what people don't see behind the scenes is how important biomanufacturing and manufacturing is to getting all these products out. I've seen it firsthand through the RADx Tech program. So I love that question, and actually you bringing it up is the first time I've really thought about it. But what I've thought about is, how can we do process improvement better, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Can we identify places in the manufacturing process where we're lagging in time, or where we're not being as efficient as we could possibly be, using AI to analyze all those different steps? And I think that would be awesome. The other thing that comes to mind is really when you're quality testing, right? All these products have to be quality tested, make sure that they're up to standards. Can we use AI to help us to understand, the quality testing, when we really have to test, when these batches are, when maybe we know we need to change things faster and easier? But that's an excellent question, and I really like just thinking about that sitting here right now, and I would love to think about that further with you and chat with you more on it, because I can see a zillion ways. Those are the two that came really quickly to my head.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Martha, and I'm not a biomanufacturing expert by any sense, but from my experience in other forms of manufacturing, the idea of predictive maintenance and using AI to understand how to keep manufacturing processes running and diagnose kind of ahead of system failures when those might be likely to occur could also have implications for biomanufacturing as well.
Great comment. I'm a member of the Regenerative Medicine Manufacturing Society, and we are starting to discuss this quite a bit, and it's so critical for translation of the product to the market. And FDA is kind of discussing this a little bit in and out as well, because as FDA is central to the regulation of getting either drugs, or this could be extended to exosomes, extracellular vesicles. It could be extended to whole cells, things like that.
I saw Sid has a question about the cloud computing cost. So NHLBI does offer $500 the initial cloud setup cost. So just test out the biodata catalyst environment and use that, and so you can apply for that. And I know all of us have also have cloud credit, and we are also thinking about maybe in specific case we may want to offer a larger amount of cloud cost to cover some of the, but that will be case by case. And so there are some I know NCI also have cloud credit, and so there are a number of NIH institutes that do offer cloud credit and to get started, to get used to it. And so just want to comment on that.
Yeah, and to use the databases, like the TOPMed database and the BioCatalyst database that James mentioned, to help to start using that data from those databases in the cloud. So there are methods to help start up and start looking at that. But great question.
And that training and the computationally intensive pieces of this can get quite expensive quite quickly.
Yes.
In the research process. And so, maybe that's a good follow-up question to kind of maybe put together a list of some of those resources. I've seen in other research domains where organizations, both government agencies and smaller companies, even small businesses, pursue partnerships with the large cloud providers, whether it's Google, Amazon, or others, and can get research credits and other things through partnerships where those companies provide in-kind contributions in the form of compute. So Sid, that might be something else to think about as another avenue. We're coming up on the end of our time here, and we haven't spent much time talking about some of the big aspects of AI that are outside the realm of kind of technical feasibility. And so one of the questions I'll pose back to James and Ilana is, what have been your observations about kind of public trust in AI-enabled systems, particularly in this very, very sensitive area of healthcare?
Yeah, we'll mention that a little bit. Ilana, you want to go ahead?
Go for it, James.
We talk a little bit, and the validation is the key. And of course, black box may not work well, and you really need to know what is inside. At least you need to be able to produce the result and it's the repeatable. And so again, once you have that, you need to go through a large population to validate the result. So that will make sense trustworthy.
So I agree that will make AI trustworthy because we validated and understood that it is. But the general public, might not look into all of that data. And right now there's a lot of lukewarm response to trustworthiness in AI. People aren't sure yet, especially in healthcare, right? Because healthcare can be such a personal thing, right? Oh, but I'm going to trust my physical human doctor. And the idea really is, and the idea we're trying to get across to the public is, AI isn't going to replace your physical human doctor. AI is going to augment your doctor, and nothing that I've read about or learned about so far says AI is going to replace the doctor. What it's going to do is augment the doctor, right? Help get you a diagnosis faster, help think about your medical health in more of a precision type medicine, right? More personalized medicine is the way to say it. So showing the public that AI is going to help their medical issues be better, enhance, even their predictive, their healthcare, make it better before it gets worse. And I think that's kind of the messaging that we have to give to the public. We're not replacing doctors. We've never said that just because some of these AI tools can pass the medical licensing exam means they are smarter than a doctor. But what it does mean is they can help a doctor out. What it does mean is they can look at your personal type medicine and maybe make suggestions that are more personal for your health and your body and your lifestyle than we could ever do before. And I think that's the type of messaging we have to give the public while these tools are just now coming out and are just starting to get out there into the public. But for scientists and as our own personal validation, James is absolutely correct in everything he says, but there's got to be a messaging to the public as well, because the tools are not going away.
Yes, I totally agree with that. So in terms of public trust, the bias, then that AI does generate some bias, particularly when your data, the input data, training data is biased. So to avoid that, you really need to have a data that is not biased, that is diverse, and that covers all the areas. And so that's another way to allow public trust the result.
But conversely, we can use the AI and we can understand from some of the AI outputs where our own bias lies, right? And where we have biases in our data sets already, and use that to inform us to generate the data that we need to make sure that we're not having all these biases in medicine. You know, we have a lot of initiatives at NIH now to make sure we are having diverse data sets, to make sure that when we're doing animal studies and human studies, it's on men and women equally. To make sure that we are including the TOPMed programs, an example of that, to make sure that we're including different races and ethnicities as we collect this data, because we understand that it varies. And this is where precision medicine is coming into play. And so we can look at what's pulling out of the AI models and we can see, hey, that, you know, makes really good sense for this population here, but not really good sense for these populations here. That's where we need to collect the data. So yeah, we have to understand there's biases in the data sets, and we can't just use it as blanket for everyone, but we can use it to inform us where those biases are, so we understand what we need to study more and what data more that we need to collect. So we can kind of flip that into the whole, this can help teach us what we're missing.
That's great. It's not, I love that thought, Ilana. It's not about eliminating bias. It's about understanding the bias and using that information to make better decisions. Excellent. So as this panel comes to a close, I'll give you each an opportunity to answer just one last question. You know, for innovators and entrepreneurs in the audience, one of their most scarce resources is certainly time. What resources do you want to highlight that might benefit audience members that are related to this topic?
In terms of data, TOPMed is a good resources that you can leverage, and it's collected, and we spend millions to collect all those data. And in terms of the other resources, and like Cloud Credit and the BTC, Biodata Catalyst, that is another resource that you could. And by the way, TOPMed data is easy in the BTC. So you could leverage that. And there are a number of tools there that you could leverage. And so, by the way, the cloud computation cost, we have negotiated with Amazon and Microsoft. And so the cloud cost, it's maybe a little bit better than the commercial cloud cost.
I want to highlight, you know, all those resources are great for data, but I want to highlight the entrepreneurial training services that are offered. So you all are in the Catalyze program, which is absolutely excellent help in the entrepreneurial training. There's also the NIH Seed Office, if somebody can drop the link to that into the chat, that offers one-on-one consultations. NHLBI entrepreneurs and residents also offer one-on-one consultations. And I think that's important, you know, to use those resources that you have to expand your entrepreneurial training. The other thing that I always say to all entrepreneurs, and I think I already said this in this chat, but it's never too early to contact the FDA. And especially with the AI modeling and algorithms, understand what they are going to need from that. And so there's definitely the DICE Center FDA, if somebody can pop the link in that. You don't have to have a prototype. You can go to them with questions, ask them what they're going to need, and that will help you when you start developing your product, start developing your models, so that you are developing towards what's going to be required. So those are some resources there to help on the entrepreneurial aspect and getting it through FDA clearance.
Right. Well, please join me in thanking James and Ilana for their time and expertise. It's been fantastic, panelists. It's been a pleasure talking with you about this topic. With that, I'll toss it back to